Major with Skyline Adjusters. I'm going to give you guys a drywall patch repair video in addressing insurance claims, flood claims, or repairs to drywall. In many cases, more than not, insurance adjusters and estimators address drywall repairs by removing and replacing the drywall without consideration of how drywall is taped in and mudded in, and how the surface is left, whether they're leaving a hump in the drywall repair that they're estimating, or they're replacing it to put it back to the way it was, or a nice smooth finish that existed before an event, a flood, or whatever it was. A lot of cases, the drywall repairs that estimators and adjusters are writing are deficient in finish, but also deficient in cost. The repair methodology that's proper sometimes exceeds the cost of just removing the wall and replacing the drywall new, which I recommend. So here's a short overview. Drywall sheets come 4x8, 4x12, 4x whatever, 10, whatever length the drywall sub or the drywall or homeowners using. And it comes on the two long ends with beveled edges, and the two short ends butt edges, and I'm going to use those throughout this video. Beveled edge has a bevel, and a butt edge does not. When builders build and they put in drywall, they'll put the drywall in, they put it horizontally, typically an 8-foot wall, and the seam that's going to be in the center of the wall is the beveled edge. Sometimes in applications there's they put the drywall vertical, or in some commercial applications vertical, but either way they're attempting to try to put as many beveled edges as possible, and as little butt joints as possible. So basically what happens is drywall's put onto studs, the drywall's beveled, it's screwed or nailed in, and it gets taped. When it gets taped, it gets a coat of mud. Tape is embedded in the mud. That is your first coat. Drywaller usually leaves, comes back a day or two later when it's dry, puts on a second coat. Day or two later comes back, sands the second coat, puts on a third coat. Day or two later comes back, sands it down, finishes, sponges it, whatever his finish is out the door. So what we're looking at is a very thin layer on the top of the drywall, and the reason for that is most of this tape, mud, and mud is embedded or within the confines, the majority of it's in the confines of the bevel with some very little overlap. So what happens, you paint and you have a pretty smooth surface. With the right light you can see where the seams are, most people can, but it's not obvious. That is our best case scenario, our best finish. We have a nice clean surface. When they're doing the work, they'll go in, tape everything, put their trim on, paint, and we have our pretty wall. When there's a catastrophe, a flood, a 2-foot flood cut, 6-inch flood cut, 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot, whatever the flood cut is, the repair typically is drywall going back in, taped in, and we wind up with a hump. We don't wind up with that clean, straight line that we have without the drywall hump. We wind up with a hump, and it's obvious. That's not what an insurance company owes somebody. That's not indemnification. That's not what you had before, unless you did have that before, but that's not what you're entitled to when you do drywall. It's not what you should have. So the reason we come up with that hump is when we have our existing drywall that they do a flood cut, we're left with a straight cut, and a new piece of drywall is put up, and it's either another butt joint up against that butt joint, or it's a new beveled edge against that butt joint. So when they're taping that, what'll happen is you'll get your first coat, you'll get your tape embedded, they'll come back, they'll put the second coat on, they'll sand it, they'll put the third coat on, they'll sand it, and you basically wind up with a hump in your wall when they paint your wall. Okay? There's no way that you can put mud, tape, mud, paint on a double butt edge or a beveled butt edge without having a hump. It just doesn't exist. Okay, so this is ideal. This is the hump. And that's what we're going to address right now. Most people are just writing it and addressing it. Some adjusters, some estimators will put in a little extra to float it in, to feather it in. No matter how much you float or feather this in, this is sticking up an 1/8 inch or a 1/16 of an inch, and you're going to float it. You're just making the hump bigger. No matter what you do and how you float it out, it's still going to be a hump. Okay? So what we do is we intentionally don't put butt joints in walls if we can help it, but when we do, we put the butt joints not on the framing and screw it or nail it to the framing. We put it in the center and not against framing. And the reason we do that is we have two butt ends together. And now, by the way, a lot of building consultants or adjusters will tell you that, well, in your vertical joints, you always have butt ends. You do in a lot of cases, okay? But what happens is we don't get this with butt ends, so we do something different. What we do is when we put the two butt ends in between two studs, we then put in a splicer, a butt splicer, okay? And I used to make these when I drywalled, and I did fire and flood, water restoration. I used to make my own splicers. I used to use a piece of OSB sheathing or plywood. I would use Marlite or some strip of material, and I would create my own butt splicer. It's relatively cheaper. You can buy them. I would screw my drywall in, and it basically was right where I just showed you, right here. I put my second piece in, screwed that in, and then I screwed both of the bevels down. And what did I have? I had a beveled joint. This is two butt joints, vertical, in between two studs, and I just put a butt splicer in, and now I can go in and I can tape that. So why can't we do that across the horizontal? The reason is because the horizontal has drywall that is butt up against the studs. So you don't have the ability to draw those in. You don't have the ability where you have a stud to be able to draw the two pieces in. This is another butt splicer that they, or drywall butt splicer that they use. You can buy, you can make your own, you can do whatever, but you're creating the space for you to tape that joint, okay? So now you're going in, you're doing your wall, typical, everything's going on. You have a hump. There's a way to not have the hump. You can do it. You can have the hump. Then you can float an entire skim coat over it. That's what a lot of people will do. I believe that once you're doing that repair and you're skim coating the wall, you're getting a nice flat surface, and you can do it that way. If I'm doing a job, I'm pulling all the drywall out. If I have a 2-foot flood cut, to me, it's cheaper if I'm writing it in Simsol or Xactimate to pull the drywall out and done. Even if I'm doing a skim coat and I make that repair and I'm saving the drywall that's 6 feet up or 4 feet up, in order to do a proper skim coat, I'm going to have to pull my trims. So I'm going in, I'm creating my butt joint, I'm creating everything, I'm creating my hump. Then when I go in to skim my wall, basically, I can't have trim on it. So I have to detach and reset or remove and replace the trims. And then I can get in and finish retrimming, paint the room, and I'm done. So that's basically a quick overview. I have a video. It's in our Skyline resources page. This is like a 12-minute video. It goes through line by line or step by step on how to estimate those repairs. I think it does it in Simsol and Xactimate, and it shows you the differences in the costs and the line items to help you. Thank you. Have a good day.